When I first came here, we didn't have any facilities at all. So actually, I brought my own two enlargers, and we started off with my equipment from home, the students, because we only had 5 students when I started.
You started documentary photography?
I started it, yes. And it was always slightly controversial within the college because basically I didn't really want qualifications as such. We took students who were doing something else and became redundant and wanted to change their training, and so they came here. And we ran the course, for, I think, for a couple of years like that, and had really good people that previously were bricklayers and things like that.
1/5 of the dome is glass, and that's a north-facing light. It was designed right at the end of the 19th century in that kind of way. You have 2 windows, one that side, an arch window, another one here. They had purpose-made blinds so that you could absolutely control the light, so it didn't change when you were drawing.
I remember a model, we were doing some drawings of her. She was sat in the chair, and she used to quite often look at your face to see which bit of her you were looking at.
Yes.
And I remember drawing her, and when she saw that I was drawing her left breast, for some reason, her hand moved. And I couldn't understand it, so I drew her hand again. And then when I moved down to somewhere else, her arm would go down. And I couldn't work out whether she was just winding me up or not. And the drawings used to end up with this kind of fuzzy bit on the one-hand side where her hand kept moving.
Yeah. This is one of the big painting studios. Well, this was the second-year painting studio. I mean, it must be, I don't know how long it is, 100 feet? Getting on?
Very airy as well, very light.
Huge, yes. I mean, intakes were quite small then as well. We would have had about no more than 15 students in here, so the amount of space they had was immense.
What would they have been doing here? Can you sort of bring it back to life for us?
Well, at the time when it functioned at this size, I mean, they would be paintings which were like 15, 20 feet long by 10 feet high. Huge pieces of work. Cut off into sections. Everybody had their own sort of little studio within the big studio. It looked, I suppose, rather like a shanty town, because although they had these screens which they built, they added on. Everything was covered in drawings, clippings. Everybody put their work on the wall to refer to, not just their drawings, but they would have newspaper clippings, poetry, all sorts of things, you know. Everybody would have a radio or a record player, you know. So there was a cacophony of noise as well, people trying to compete with each other, you know.
You wouldn't be an art student unless you were in a band. I mean, I couldn't play a single note while I strummed, a bit like Joe Strummer, you know, that's how he got his name. But we formed a band, and we used to play up at the Students' Union on Stowe Hill.
Is a hymn for the dogs.
Woody, Joe Strummer, although he wasn't, you know, he used to hang around and would attend some of the lectures, and I think we're going to go and visit the lecture theatre now, and he used to just wander in, and nobody really knew whether he was a student.
Came to a dance here, an art college dance. Yes, he did. He was in pursuit of some girl or other, as far as I remember. Art schools seemed to be the breeding ground for many, many, many pop musicians. I mean, it was one of the few places you couldn't go to university and do it. They were too bright just to be not doing anything, if you understand what I mean. So a lot of them came out of art schools. I mean, John Lennon, people like that came out of art schools. A lot of them were associated with art schools, either directly or indirectly, because it was a place where they could actually practice it, and people didn't mind.
At some stage, even art students have to do some academic work, and that brings us to the lecture theatre. The empty shell of the one here still looks like a place of learning, even though the windows are broken, the floors littered with rubbish, and graffiti covers the walls.
Well, this was a lecture theatre, wasn't it, David?
Yeah.
Very Dickensian, wasn't it? It had these extraordinary wooden sort of benches and desks.
Medical places.
Yes.
Can you describe it to me now?
Well, what you can see are the platforms with grills in. This building was heated by hot air. It didn't have radiators. And quite an extraordinary system, apparently. When it was designed, it kept the ambient temperature either above or below what it was outside. But it never did, because it was the most freezing lecture theatre I've ever been in.
Many people would come in. I think they were sort of friends of people who were students, and if there was a subject they were particularly interested in, they'd bring them along, or they'd just turn up. I think quite a large percentage of the students or the people in this room wouldn't have actually been students.
So our journey was nearly over. We'd climbed to the top floor and the life room, picked over broken glass and splashed through murky water in the basement. And we'd heard the stories of those who'd made this place so unusual, echoing through the elegant corridors. And we end our journey where we began, back in the foyer of what was the old College of Art here in Newport. Three of you walking around this amazing building. We've heard your memories. What's your feeling as you come to the end of it? Let's start with you, John.
Strangely enough, I wasn't looking forward to coming in to see this wreck, but in a strange kind of way, the wreck's disappeared, and it's become what I remember, you know. And I think those memories are far stronger than this devastated building.
I'm just saddened by the colossal waste. I mean, it was a wonderful building, and I can't believe that somebody couldn't have done something to keep it and to use it.
Like John, the memories are still here. I've still got the memories. When we go out of this door and close the door, they're still going to be with me. I won't be looking at the building. It's like only remembering the good bits. But I genuinely believe that this building will be transformed in the future into something, not a college again, but will be brought back into use of some form. And I just hope that it will be preserved, all the features that we can see now, and that it will take on a new life and continue to the future.
We've talked a lot about the building, but what about its role in pop culture, in counterculture, in art, in music? That remains undiminished, isn't it?
It does, and I think a point that David made earlier, when he goes up to London and meets up with perhaps an ex-student, and he starts off with 1 and he ends up with 5, I find the same sort of thing as well. When I talk to somebody, you know, they'll say, I was in Newport Art College, and you get this sort of chain reaction, particularly when you're away from the area. People have got very nostalgic views about coming to Newport. I think everybody who spent time in Newport absolutely loved coming here, and I think they'll all have fond memories, and they'll all remember it with great pleasure.
I think that if you look at some of the people that have been through this college and the standards of things they've achieved, out of all proportion to the size of the college and of the town.